Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again. Sorry I haven't been consistent with my videos lately, and that it's been actually quite a while since you've seen me. I had some issues going on in my personal life, and so I wasn't able to get to my videos as much as I would have liked, and for that I am sorry. I had to move again, and lots of things like that going on that have been taking up a lot of my time, but I'm hoping that now I can get back to my original set schedule that I had. We're gonna see how it goes, and I'm gonna try and tweak the days, things like that, as I see it progressing moving forward. So again, I'm so sorry for my inconsistency. I know that it kind of doesn't work. This reading along and stuff like that doesn't work if I'm not consistent, and I understand that. But hopefully I can get back on schedule. I can get back in business. It might take me a couple of weeks to get there. It might take me a little bit of time to figure out how with my work schedule and things like that to get on a good schedule to doing back to 2 videos a week. So please be patient with me. I'm trying really hard to make sure I can get back in the groove, and we are going to continue and persevere. So hopefully it hasn't been so long since you read the book or these chapters that you won't remember what we're talking about. And if it has been a while, just go ahead and skim through them real quick. I'll wait right here and you can refresh yourself, since it's all my fault that it's taken so long. So go ahead, I'll wait. Go ahead, review. Okay, you're back? Good. So this video is going to be on chapters 9 through, look at my trusted notes here, 9 through 13, and this is part of book 2 of the Dragons of Autumn Twilight. So the second book in the first book, if you know what I mean. I probably am going to have a shorter video today already, feeling like it's probably going to be a shorter video just because with everything going on. I did read these chapters a while ago and made my notes a while ago, so it's kind of hard to be back in the flow and like really know what I was thinking when I read them, as well as since we are so far through the book, we don't really have as much to talk about other than seeing the events progress and seeing how we're going to lead up to book 2. Please let me know if the lighting is okay, if my background is okay. Trying to do the best I have with the space that I'm in right now. So sorry again, I know my last video, last place had a better background I was able to come up with, but I feel like this is pretty good. Any anime lovers, please like this video and comment. But try to make it as interesting and as nice of a background as possible. So let me know on that. For next video, we don't have very many chapters. I think we have 3. Let me see, 14, 15, and then the wedding. And technically we have that Song of Huma at the end. So not too much and a shorter amount to read than normal weeks. So this video, like I said, is probably going to be a bit shorter. I've got some things to talk about, but it's going on to the next book, so it's probably not going to be a super long class as normal. So sorry for the shortened class, but I do feel like we will talk about the important things to look at for this section, and then we'll just wrap it up. Next video, we will go ahead and talk about the last little bit, minorly, probably not going to be too much to discuss on that, but then we're going to be looking at the book as a whole and setting ourselves up to start book 2 of the series. Yeah, so I think that is the plan for moving forward for the next couple of videos. After we finish this book, we'll go right into the next book. So let's go ahead and get started, if that's all right with you. All right, so the first thing I wanted to talk about today is the tensions in the group. I know we talk about tension a lot, especially between characters and the dynamics of the tension and all that jazz. I've mentioned it in several videos. But I think that that's something important because it's something that we've seen consistently throughout the book. We keep coming back to it between different characters, different tensions, different ideas, going through these different people because we have such a large group. Even from the very beginning, we've got the group of friends versus the outsiders, which were Goldmoon and Riverwind, before they became a part of the group and everyone could trust them. We had the tensions all the way from that point. And it's because from the very beginning, we already have a large group of people with a large, sorry, not really going in the way I want that to do. We have such a large group of people. So we have a lot of ideas and a lot of personalities, there we go, that are in this group, and which, as we know, just being people, you have disagreements, you have different ideas, you have different views, you have different wants and different trusts and things like that. It's harder to trust some people, harder not to trust some people. So throughout the whole book, with so many characters, we've got a lot of different tensions, a lot of people going different ways, a lot of stress between ideas and characters. And so that's why we keep coming back to it and coming back to it. And I'm sure in the next book we'll be talking about it again. So since it's such a core element of the book and the characters and the dynamic of reading about this, I keep coming back and I keep bringing it up in the different situations that we have. So right now what we have is kind of a civil disagreement. We have a lot of people in a lot of different places, and Tanis is trying his best to lead everybody in the best way that he knows how to, but there are people who don't trust other people in the group. People have never trusted Razlin, and so Razlin is still being distrusted. Then we have Gilthanas and Eben, who are both equally distrusted by most of the group because they are the newcomers, and they are not known well, and they believe that one of them is a traitor, especially Gilthanas, because of the tension and the prejudice and things like that he has against Tanis and humans in general. And so the humans are distrusting him back, as well as he is a bit shifty in the fact that his story seems fishy. So even though he's saying it's true, a lot of the group doesn't believe him and thinks that it is just luck that made him one of the only survivors from Solus, with his whole team being destroyed. We do know for certain that there's a traitor, and the group has figured out that there is most likely been a traitor in the group, and they do believe it's either Eben or Gilthanas. So we're going to see who it turns out to be, who it doesn't turn out to be. We did see the portion where Pyros was talking to the traitor, and Tass and Fizbin were listening into that conversation, so they know who it is, but we were not 100% sure ourselves as the reader because they didn't mention the name or who it was per se. So we even have the so we know that there is for sure a traitor, and the group thinks that there's a traitor, and they question both Gilthanas and Eben for leaving the fight. So they still both equally look distrustful. So again, let's just go over what stress and tension in this story is doing, because not every story is going to be the same. We're not going to have as many characters in other ones, and we're going to have to see how tension and stress between those characters work when we're on a smaller scale, or how other authors handle it in general. But in this story, stress is used as a second tension, or a second way of making it so we're not sure if things are going to work out okay. We know that there's a traitor, but we don't know who. So the tension between the characters are like, who is it? Who is it? We feel that ourselves as readers. So we have an extra layer, an extra reason to be concerned, because the plan might not go well. This is a risky plan. They could be captured. They could be found out. They could die. They could have anything happen to them at this point. But not only do they have this dangerous situation going on, we also have this traitor. We also have these tensions rising. We also have this distrust going on. We also have everything else that's going on with Gilthanas and Eben. And Ras, if we're going to include him in our tension, because he is still considered untrustworthy because of his evil and powerful desires. Though technically he is a neutral wizard, no one in the group other than Caramon actually believes that he is truly innocent. So we're going to see how that progresses as we go. Keep that in mind. It's probably going to carry on over to the next book. So not only these next chapters, but the next book. We'll have to see how things get resolved in that way. Whew. All right. Next things next is we're going to talk about Tass and Fizban's new character dynamic. Because for the first time since the start of the story, we actually have our group split up. Now, most of the group is still together, but Tass and Fizban go up the chain instead of through the door when they're attacked by that elf. So now we have the Tass and Fizban section going on and the group that's trying to save everyone going on, and we're flipping back and forth. And the other characters don't know what's happening with these characters. And at times we even flip in between the chapters back and forth for the timeline. So this gives us a new way to specifically see how Tass and Fizban interact with each other, how their relationships are together, and how their characters are when dealing specifically one-on-one with each other. Sorry, a lot of practice from not filming videos, so I hope that I'm not being too slow or too whatever. I'm just trying to get my brain to flow and think about what I'm trying to say. Even though I have my notes, sometimes it's still uneasy on how to get to where I'm trying to say. Because on the paper it's just an outline. Not gotta try and actually say what I'm trying to say. So we see with this dynamic that Tass has a lot of strong points to him. We've never really seen Tass in the limelight before. We've seen a little bit from here and there on his point of view, or where he's by himself, minorly. But Tass is usually pushed aside, if you know what I mean, by Tanis or the bigger characters, the ones that know how to lead, the ones that know what they should be doing, who's kind of saying, hey, not right now, Tass. Pardon me. But here, between Tass and Fizban, we're going to choose who the smarter of the group is, or the more focused, or anything. It's going to be Tass, because Fizban is this nutty wizard that doesn't know what he's doing and is kind of half senile. So we really see Tass's strengths in this dynamic when they're off together. We see Tass being the one that decides where they're going to go, decides what they're going to do, decides how to handle the situation, comes up with the plan and the ideas. You see his strengths start to rise and start to come to light, and you really see that Tass really can handle himself better than you think he can. He's not just someone who likes to pickpocket and is kind of the silly character. You see that he can also make decisions and can also be a mature character. So he's taken so he's the one that decides to save Seston, which yes does end up being why they get chased by the dragon, but we're gonna see where that goes. He still though decides, hey, we've got to go here, we've got to do this, and this is what we're gonna do in his own way, and what his strengths will allow him to do, and what Fizban's strengths with him will allow him to do. So he is now the leader of this two-man pack that has separated from the others. So even though the book is almost over, we are showing character dynamics, character changes, character personalities in general that we hadn't seen before, new dynamics, new relationships, new things are being built in this moment, despite it being toward the end of the book. So this is important to keep in mind, because despite us being at the end of the book, we are still building character. This does not work for every story. This does not work for every book. But because this book knows it's going to have a second book in place, and this is going to continue the storyline of this book. It's not like the storyline we're building to is going to end at the end of this book. For example, mysteries or fantasy stories like Jim Butcher's Dresden Files and Patricia Briggs' Mercy Thompson series and her Alpha Omega series. Those kind of books are a series that do connect to each other and the storyline does go on, but each story has its own plot and its own ending, its own sequence of events that end here. So then yes, later in time after that happens, we start a new book and we have another set of series that needs to be finished for one plot down to the next book, and then the next book. This story is continuing its story into the next book. The plot, the main plot of the story that we're reaching for right now is overarching all three books. So we can continue to build character, develop relationships, develop maturity, change characters, all that jazz as we continue going for the end of the book, because the authors know that the story will not end here. So this is a good reference to see how, as we read this book and the next book, how they continue it into the book that follows, and how close to the end we still develop things, we still have things going, and we still have these changes till we get to the end. And then we can compare this series to other series like the ones I just mentioned, and how they develop characters and how they do things, and if they hold it to the end or not, and how those differences are when you have a plot that's just one book long versus 3 books long. And even if we get to some that aren't part of a series as well, we can go ahead and look at how those books also handle plot and character development and see how it's different. So as a reader, it's important to know that we're continuing this because we're going to continue the story in the next book. It's not really an ending. And it's important to see if this works. I'll go ahead and discuss that when we get to the next book, is did this work? After we see all the progression that we've made, does it smoothly transition into the next one? And as a writer, it's important to know what kind of things you should be doing, should not be doing, how to transition these books if you're going to do a series. Are you going to have a one plot book, or is the plot going to go over all 3? And how is it best to organize your information and your developments within these books for these plots, and how it will work for the book as a whole and the series as a whole. All right, so next topic. Let's get to the next thing. Fizbin. Fizbin, Fizbin, Fizbin. Fizbin. Please leave a comment or a like if you think Fizbin is amazing. And Tass, him too. I should have put that in with this. The whole dynamic thing is that they are both amazing characters. And I hope that even if you don't love them quite yet, that by the next book, or at least by the 3rd book, that you will love them as much as I do. But we're going to now focus on Fizbin. Okay, sorry. I will stop my enamoring of Fizbin. What do I even want to say? It's kind of hard to start into this whole thing, especially since I have read them and you might not have. So I know things that you don't know, and I'm trying to lead us somewhere without blowing through surprises. It's a really hard thing to do. Please forgive me if you feel that I give too much away or whatnot, but I think that what we have to work with in this book is enough for me to do this kind of discussion. Because we already have had several incidences, if you are paying enough attention, to know that Fizbin is not what he seems. We have at this point no idea what he is, or what he's doing, or his motives or anything else. But we do know that he is not just some crazy, cracked wizard that likes to shoot fireballs and webs and not know how to totally do his spells. And this is especially apparent now that we're getting to this ending point here and we have this whole detour with Tass, which he somehow arranged, if you consider that he lifts Tass up on to the chain, but he doesn't have anybody else go with them. He lets them all run through the door. How is it that everyone else heard to go through the door, but he has Tass climb this chain? Then, not only once they get up to this point, they find a painting that is so covered in dust that it's unrecognizable. But there is a moment that Tass looks upon it and sees the photo that's there of the dragons. Then Fizbin hears what he says about it, says that he understands, and wipes it from his memory, apparently, and he can no longer see the image. It's so grime-stained. Crazy wizards don't just come out and be like, oh, hey, look at this wonderful painting. It suddenly is good to go. And then, great, you understand, and you'll remember later. And that's it. Like, we see that Fizbin is more than what he seems. We don't know where he's leading them. We don't know what's happening. We do know that it's not obviously a terrible thing because the photo, the portrait is of good dragons, and that there are good dragons that the knights used to use to combat the bad dragons that the Queen of Darkness had used in the past. So we know that it's obviously he's not leading them to destruction or that he's the traitor or anything else, because we see him trying to make a difference in a good way. But we still don't really know what it is that he wants, what it is that he's doing, or anything else. So it's interesting to see where we are going. Now, this is important to discuss and to think about on both levels as a reader and a writer. As a reader, it's very important to pay attention to this because we are getting hints dropped as we go along through Fizbin. We have enough mystery that we are intrigued. We want to know what is happening. We don't know what's happening, but we know enough that we will want to continue reading and to have added interest to continue to hold our interest as well as we go through to the next book. We want to see what is happening. What are we leading to? Who Fizbin is? What is his goals? Where are we going? And where is he taking this group of people? So, as a reader, this mystery with subtle hints and drops of intrigue is what is going to keep us reading, and it's going to keep us going on and wanting to know what happens, and gives us so many questions that we want answered that we cannot put it down. At least for me, that's how it is that I can't put it down when it comes to Fizbin, because you just want to know. And for me personally, as reading it over and over again, it still amazes me every single time, the little hints that I pick up every time I read. I don't notice everything. And so when I read it again, I notice new hints, new drops, new intrigues, new things, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't notice that before. And because I do know who he is and what he's planning and where he's going with this, it makes it where you see what's happening as it goes along. You're like, oh man, this is how this happened. Oh man, here's the hints where he does this, and this is how they get this. And so even after the mystery is solved from the first read, it's still intriguing to see how this character works, because he is so interesting. Oh, Fizbin. Alright, so now to discuss the second portion, which is the writer's aspect and why it is important to keep an eye on Fizbin and what he is doing. Because if you are wanting to write a character, or any writing at all, it is good to know how to balance enough mystery and enough intrigue and knowledge. There we go, that's what I'm looking for, is to balance the mystery and the intrigue and the knowledge and what you're giving the reader. Because Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman do a really great job of giving little hints here and here, little moments of clarity, like when he knows the discs are going to let them through the pass, and when he knows about this painting and shows it to Tass and then erases his memory, or when he does idiotic things and yet somehow it works out. So these just little, or when he talks to the Speaker of the Sun and he's suddenly very serious and knows exactly what to say, and get up in the speaker's face and you're like, where did the crazy old man go? What is he doing? Obviously he's something different than what we all think, or what he's making the others believe that he is. The moment when Ras first meets him and he freaks out until all of a sudden he's calm again and doesn't seem to know anything. So we get these hints progressively getting bigger and bigger and bigger until now we are for sure yeah, this dude is not who he says he is, with the moment with Tass. Because it seems like, oh, obviously if he's showing him this painting and he wants him to know something, he has led Tass here. Especially since they were obviously separated from the group. So now we really know that something is going on. So how do you balance in your writing, and you want to be able to learn from a character like Fizbin, is how do you balance wanting to keep a person or a thing or an event or whatever else a mystery, and yet balance enough knowledge for the reader to know, to keep them intrigued and wanting to read more and wanting to get to the next portion, or wanting to see who this character or this thing or whatever else is. So really make sure that you look at Fizbin, you see how he progresses, you see the way to keep something like a character a mystery or deceived, and yet drop enough hints that the reader stays interested and wants to know more, and wants to keep reading, and wants to find out what this mystery is, and to solve it. And to also give enough clues to be able to figure out things that will be coming up. Like, oh, we've now figured out that he definitely is not who he is, and then we get some proof for it. Well, we're going to see in this next book, what other hints are going to be dropped? Are we going to be able to figure out who he is? So keep that in mind with your own writing. Try and study him a bit as we continue going, and figure out, how do you, in your own book, how can you take what Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman have done with Fizbin and apply it to your own mysteries that you want to keep and your own mysteries that you want to do. Whether it be like I said, a character or a thing or a event or a place, whatever else that you want to have enrich your story and give more intrigue to it. So, let's see. Got one more thing. Well, it's not even really a complete thing. One more little bit of discussion that I want to have for things to keep in mind. This is not something that I really am going to talk in depth about each thing and how it relates to the writing or reading of anything. This is going to be more the important stuff of what we want to keep in mind as we progress through the last couple of chapters and into the next book, or just important events that happened that will lead us on to the next book that we have not answered in this book, and we'll keep going to the next one. So in a way, this is important to keep in mind, because when you are reading a series, you have to keep events from one book to the next book to the next book until they get resolved. There might be some that happen in book 1 and don't get resolved until book 7, depending on how big the series is and how the author puts their events together. In this one, obviously, we have a little bit more, because it's the same plot for over the 3 books, it's more likely that things will come around again in book 2, because we are still continuing the same story instead of having something that happened and then it doesn't really relate to anything that happens in the next couple plots and then we come back to it or whatever else. It's a bit more of a concise storyline with the 3 books. So let's go ahead and just go over these couple of things just to keep in our brains to move forward with, and to see also how it gets moved from book 1 and progresses to book 2, and how they drop these hints and how they handle them when they repick them back up in a later time. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and go over those things. If you have any comments, questions, concerns about anything I have discussed so far, or on these particular items that you already have kind of a premonition about, or something that you think is interesting, or want to discuss some of these things with me as part of the storyline in general, or you have your own things that you're saying, oh, I think this is going to happen, or whatever else, I would love to have a discussion with you in the comments below about it. So I have 3 main things that I think from these particular chapters are not going to be solved because they're too big to be solved in the next 2 chapters and the little ending, and are going to be going to the next book that we should keep in mind and to keep thinking about and to see how it gets picked back up. The first things first is Kith Khan, the skeleton, gives Tanis his sword. Not only does a skeleton move and deliberately give Tanis his sword, he is an ancient king that gives a half-elf, and Tanis specifically, this sword. He doesn't give it to Gilthanas, he doesn't give it to any of the other characters, he doesn't give it to Lorana, who, if we're going to think about elves specifically, he gives it to Tanis. And that is basically like saying, like, he's the one that has the right to have the sword. Kind of, if we're going to relate it to other stories that might be more familiar, like Lord of the Rings. The sword is passed down to Aragorn, which, yes, he, technically it could be just any sword or whatever, and it's Elrond that decides to deliver it to him, and he doesn't technically have to have this sword, but he's the only one that can wield the sword, and it is a specific sword to him because he is the king, coming king of Gondor. He is Isildur's heir. So it is specifically his sword that he is chosen, the chosen one, to be able to use. It's the sword that he is destined to have for his lineage. With Tanis, this dead elven king has decided to deem him the one worthy to wield his sword, and that his need of the sword is desperate at this time. And it's a magical sword. So, all that wrapped together is pretty interesting. We want to see how this dead skeleton gave him the sword, and why does he give him the sword? Okay. Next one is, for the point that we want to keep in mind, is the portrait that I talked about with Fizbin and Tass. So we know that this portrait exists, that Tass has basically drawn out for us. What it means is that there are good dragons that the knights can use against the evil dragons. So we're going to see how that information plays out, as well as the fact that Tass was supposed to forget until the time is right. Why does he have to forget till the time is right? Why does Fizbin not want him to know this now? Why Tass specifically knowing this information? When will the right time be? Will these dragons appear in the next one? Where do these dragons come from? What does Fizbin know about these dragons? This particular portrait in this particular instance bundles all these questions together in a nice little package where we're stupefied and like, what's happening? What's going on? We're being dropped this big thing where, hey, the good guys can also get dragons, and yeah, oh, but we're not going to address that for a while. So we're going to see how all of those questions get answered in the next book, if they do get answered in the next book. We're going to see how that progresses, and that will again go along with how Fizbin progresses. So keep in mind those good dragons. We're going to see where it goes. We're going to see what it means and how they will find these dragons and what the right time of knowing this information will be. Next and final thing that I think is something we should keep and carry on from these chapters into the next book is the mysterious voice that Razlan hears in his head that has popped up now for a second time. So once is an incident, even though we know that Razlan said that it's happened a lot, but 2 times means that it might be forming a pattern, and it might be important, And obviously, since we don't know about it, we want to know about it. So how are the authors going to tell us about this? Who is this voice? Is it somebody who's helping them? Is it that Rosalind is just demented? Like, where is the power that comes with this voice coming from? What does it mean? What does it all mean? What is the meaning of Rosalind's life? We want to know these things, and so we're going to keep those in mind. We're going to keep it in our brain until the next book, and we're going to see where it goes. So those 3 things I think are the important things that we know based on the couple of chapters we have left, are not going to be solved and are important enough that we should think about them in the next book and take that information over with us. So I'll probably touch on those things again in the next episode, just to remind us that those are the 3 things that we need to keep in mind when we go over the book as a whole and everything like that, and transition to our next book. So, as we know, we're going to read the rest of the book for the next episode and discuss the book as a whole and see how we thought things went. I think this is going to be a little bit of a harder episode for me coming up, just because it took me a little bit longer, obviously, to read it than it probably did you guys, because you probably were like, I'm going ahead of reading since you're not uploading videos, and so you were a little bit more condensed. As well as, it's kind of hard, I think, sometimes to think of topics to discuss the book as a whole when you're used to looking at the nitty-gritty stuff and you're like, oh, I've already covered this. But I think it'll be important to see, even though we've talked about progression and things like that in these tiny increments, to discuss it and look at the book as a full picture and to readdress some things that we didn't know in the beginning and see how that now turned out now that we have the whole big picture of the first book. So, I will go ahead and see you next week for that. I am going to try and put up a new video for my writers who want to know more about writing. I think my next video is going to be on setting. I'm going to try and get that out as soon as possible. Please, again, be patient with me as I try and find some filming time and try and progress through my work and getting time to film these videos. It might not be as quick as I'd like. I will try at least to get the next video for the book up and within a week's time or so that way it's not quite such a big stretch, and then we can get on to book 2. So thank you so much for holding on and sticking with me, and excusing how many videos have come 2 to 3 weeks later instead of within 1 week increments, and the fact that my character analysis and my writer videos are not as consistent and coming as good as they should be. I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna try to get a hold of myself and be able to create content for you guys on a more scheduled basis. So enjoy reading the rest of the book and finishing it up if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Alright, see ya!